My name is Meira Blaustein. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Woodstock Film Festival, and it's so great to be back here at beautiful White Feather Farm for our panels. We love being here. We're thankful for Sarah Johnson and everything that she does for White Feather Farm and for our community and for the community of filmmakers. So thank you, Sarah. Even though I don't see her here, but her spirit is all over the festival. And she's quite alive, by the way. So I'm the co-founder and executive director of the festival. This is the 24th year of the festival. We have been doing panels right from our inception. So many amazing panels. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Barbara, I think.
She meant she should shut up.
I know. I knew that. I know, Barbara. I just want to say take you back in time to 2000. That was the very first year of the festival, and we had a panel at the Bearsville Theater. It was a documentary panel with Barbara Kopple and Leon Gast and Dia Pennybaker and Al Maisels, and I'm standing, it was the very first year of the festival, and I'm standing there and I'm thinking, does the audience know that they're in front of legends? I mean, all these amazing documentary filmmakers were there for the very first year. And 24 years after, we have Barbara Kopple here again. Now for Sheila Nevins, this is the first time. For Sheila Nevins, this is the first time. It took us 24 years to bring her, but I'm very, very thrilled that she's here. And we'll see if we can bring her back again for the 25th. Obviously, you're here with two legends. Barbara is, 2 times Academy Award-winning filmmaker. She's done, every time I say over 40 films, she tells me it's way more than 40 films at this point. She's done so many films, so many award-winning films. She's amazing. She's also been to the festival, I think, every single year, which... Sheila has done, she says, 1,000 films, and I believe her because Sheila's totally revolutionized documentary film world, as I'm sure everybody in the audience here knows. So we are in front of legends. They will have an incredible conversation here, and at some point we'll open it also for Q&A. However, you're in for a treat because before the conversation, we're showing a film called The ABC of Book Banning, which is Sheila's film and Sheila's baby.
I want to say something.
And Barbara is going to say something. So enjoy the panel. Put your electronic devices on silence, and thank you also very much for being here. Barbara, take it away.
Okay, I just wanted to say that Sheila has won 35 News and Doc Emmys. 37. Excuse me. 37. 42 Peabodys. 26 Academy Awards. 31 Excellence in Broadcasting. And where does she put them? Yes. And you also won the Lifetime Achievement Award for the Emmys, as well as so many others.
So did you last night.
So where are they?
They're in the basement of my son's house in a sort of mothy closet.
Mike.
Oh, they're in the basement of my son's house in a sort of mothy kind of, closet. And several of them in transport lost their wings or their legs. But I haven't really wanted to fix them. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I think
I
that is.
thought it was more documentary for them to be as they were.
I agree. And I think you should have a show with them.
Sort of a display.
Yes.
The wounded.
Yes.
Each one was a wound of sorts.
Yes, and some of the filmmakers who worked on them could come be at the show.
I don't
right?
give people credit.
Okay. You take all the credit. Okay. All right, do we want to see this film that Sheila made? So this was so beautiful and such a wonderful way to start our discussion. Would you like to talk a little bit about what made you decide to do this book, this film? You can't hear?
I think, okay, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me? This is one of the few times I can't be heard. It kind of was the end of my tenure at MTV, and in many ways the end of my tenure as an executive or making docus. And this was sort of harboring inside me, which is that I kept reading about book banning, and there was very little money left in our budget, which was very small. And Trish at Delphic was sitting.
Hi, Trish.
Trish, and Marissa and I, we were all sort of sitting together, and I said, I want to do one last film. I want to do this one film with the kids, because we haven't heard from the kids. We hear, grown-ups talking about book banning and, PAN America and the American Library Association librarians, but we don't really know if the kids feel they're missing anything. So we sort of set about to do it, and given, I must say, very little change to make it. So we bled a little. Is that accurate, would you say? That's Trish. She should really stand, because she was sitting with me when I said, let's do it. And the next day, the very next day, Trish went down to Florida to grab Grace, and we told Grace she couldn't do any more shows. And she said, that's okay, give me $10,000. I need a new car. And that was how we nabbed Grace, and she really is just beyond spectacular. And it was unclear what the children would think. It was unclear that they would be spokespeople for learning. And it was interesting, because it brought back one's own childhood and one's own relationship with books. And, the fact that your universe in a library is the world. And so we really worked as a team on this, and we worked very hard, and we worked very long. And we want to be loved.
Yeah.
And, but in many ways for me, it was the end of a career. And I've been working at this for 70 years. I'm 84 years old. I'm an old person. Thank you.
No, you're not.
And I have had enough. And so...
well, then the question is, what's next?
Well, it's inevitable, isn't it? What's next? I think, there's so many books. It sort of taught me about all the books I hadn't read that had been around the last 30 years that I've been spending days and nights making this thing called documentaries. And 30, 50 years. And that somehow I had missed a lot of steps on the way. Lousy mother, lousy wife, decent human being, but really devoted to the craft. And so admiring of Barbara, who seemed to have a life and make these genius films. And how did you do it?
I was always poor.
Well, you poor for the very...
I didn't go for the money.
Oh, I went for the money.
That's why.
I went for the money. And when I got to HBO and I realized that if I wanted to nudge the world, I was not Barbara Kopple. If I wanted to nudge the world, I could do that too. But I could also do late night sex shows. I could do Autopsy and Taxicab Confessions, and I could make a living, and they could need me. And then I realized I could do children's shows in the early part of the day, and that docus run the expanse of R to PG to G, if for want of better, letters, and that if they left me alone, I could deliver. And HBO in the very beginning was like a startup, although that's a new word. That's when I joined it. And basically my first assignment, I didn't even know what docus were. If I hadn't looked at your stuff.
And nobody knew about HBO. What was HBO?
I had no idea. I had no idea.
Didn't you leave?
I left CBS because Don, you had wanted me to be on camera, and I didn't want to be on camera. And, it was the time of pinching and squeezing and nibbling in the back of your neck. And there were a lot of male correspondents there. Fortunately, most of them are dead, so I can give you their names later.
And the edit room was the worst place.
How did you know that?
I looked it up.
The edit room, the door to the edit room, the first piece I ever got to do, Barbara, was you had already made your mark. And I, although you're quite a bit younger than I am, but still, Barbara Kopple was like, oh my God, Barbara, she gives her life to her films. Now, I'm in this corporation, what do? they want 40 docus by next September. So basically, I divided it up between late night, taxi cab, afternoon, Nudge the World, morning, kids. And I just hired people, and they did them, and we put them on, and we filled space. And we weren't allowed to use the word documentary because I was told nobody watched documentaries. So we used the word docutainment. And then when we started to do films about abortion or films about PTSD and the Vietnam War, suddenly the word docutainment wasn't working. So they allowed me to use the word documentary for the afternoon, but late night was docutainment and children was children. And then finally documentary became the word that we used in all three areas. So, but unlike Barbara, I didn't want to be poor. I had grown up poor, and I figured...
I don't want to be poor.
Well, then you have to make late night sex shows.
It's a little late for that.
Never too late, Barbara. Never too late. But anyway, so my trip was a different one. She has never, I think, given up her fight back. And I gave it up in many ways, put it in a special part of the day, and used the rest of the day to really up my salary. And the editing room was horrible because the door was behind you. So you never knew who was lifting your hair and biting your neck. It could have been a well-known correspondent, and you, at least I, didn't say no. I just let it happen because I wanted to stay there. I told my friend I'd gone to Barnard. I told my girlfriend, Roberta, that Don, you had bitten the back of my neck and that I was so excited. And she said, me too. They're not going to let you go now. They'll keep you. And they did. So I really, the vocabulary has changed. My understanding of the things that I did and didn't do has changed. Good for women. But I was there before the language changed. And I submitted to the rules of the day because I wanted a career. And that's what I did. And I wanted a salary, Barbara.
Oh, I know. Where did you get this drive? How did it start? Was there someone in your life? I heard that an uncle was part of your life that put you into private school as you were growing up.
I had a very wealthy uncle, a great uncle, my mother's uncle. My mother was disabled, and her uncle, my great uncle, was Harry Dejur, D-E-J-U-R. And he and his brother had kind of invented for General Electric the steam iron. And so he was called, not Uncle Harry, he was called Rich Uncle Harry. I thought, I swear, his first name was Rich, like Richard for Richard. But as I grew older, I realized when he paid for my college that it was Rich Uncle Harry. And he was brutal. I mean, you know, I used to have to put 10 cents in the machine to use the typewriter because I didn't get straight A's at Barnard. And when I got straight A's, 1 year, only one semester, he let me buy a typewriter. Do you remember what typewriters were? So, you know, I've been around a while. And
but he also put you through private school.
How do you know so much about me?
Because I love you and I want to know everything.
Did you do my homework?
I did.
That's scary.
I'll forget about it.
Okay, fine, much better. She did her homework. What else do you know about me? Not too much, I hope.
I do, but...
The naughty parts?
The naughty parts, the good parts, the wonderful parts, the parts where you just made documentaries really bloom and you were able to pick your own subjects and you were courageous and you stood up against people who didn't want you to do it no matter what the risk.
That sounds better than me. No, I was brazen. I think having a mother who was, didn't have an arm, didn't have a leg. She had Raynaud's and scleroderma, and she'd had early amputations. She'd had 4 brothers. One abused her. She was the only one of 4 immigrant, they were all born in Russia, except for my mother, that went to college. None of her brothers did. The brother that had this entanglement with her, which I found out very late in life, was never invited to anything in the family. And the other 2 brothers were reasonably successful as immigrants, but, you know, it was an immigrant family. And Uncle Harry, who was a French Jew, Uncle Rich Uncle Harry, really supported my mother. He really felt for her. And she was the only person he was really kind to because she was so disabled. And so I thought he would be kind to me, but he was not. But I did get a typewriter. I did get a typewriter.
What was that like growing up with a mother who was sick? And what was your father like?
My father was a gambler. He was never home. He was good looking and he was out all the time. I think you'd say he was a rake. He had girlfriends. I would see him occasionally with somebody that wasn't my mother. But then people were too poor to get divorced or to, you just stayed together. My Uncle Harry had gotten him a job at the post office, my rich Uncle Harry, and he boxed mail ostensibly. So to this day, if mail arrives, I always think it's a mistake. I read to see if it's for me, because all he did was book bets at the big post office on 33rd Street. So he was a gambler, and what was the question? Why am I going back like this? I want to view my psychiatrist here. Do I have to pay?
We're just learning about your beginnings.
Oh, my beginnings. Well, I don't know how to feel.
And
I was always embarrassed by my mother's disability.
How you got the confidence to be number one.
I still don't have it.
That's not what I know.
Test me.
You wanted to be number one.
I still want to be number one.
And you are. You are
No.
the most important executive.
I am an important executive because I'm ballsy.
That's right.
And I've lasted longer than anybody else.
But where did that come from in you?
I don't know. Somebody here know me? Where'd it come from? Where'd it come from, Marissa?
Well, we're still learning.
I don't know where it came from. I mean, maybe because I thought life was unfair and that there was a way to punch it back. I still think life is unfair and you have to punch it back. And if your hands work, I knew too many people because of my mother's disability who didn't have hands or didn't have fingers or, it was Korean War. It wasn't Vietnam, but the fact that you could do that was very important. I didn't do that when the back of my neck was kissed, but 20 years later I did. But 20 years later, nobody was kissing the back of my neck anymore.
So did you have to really struggle at HBO to get where you were? What was life like? Was it a men's locker room?
It was a men's locker room. I learned how to tell jokes.
Were they good ones? They were
sexy
ones?
The sexy ones I didn't tell. I was uncomfortable. But I would tell jokes like, should I tell you a joke?
Yeah.
Okay, so Isidore goes to the doctor. So it would be the beginning of a meeting. And it was me, Carolyn Strauss, who was gay and beautiful, and I love her, and she's made millions and billions of dollars at HBO. She's just the greatest. And me. And we would sit around this table, and this was my joke. Isidore went to the doctor, and he said, "Doctor, everything hurts me." And the doctor would say, "What? And he would say, "I touch my head hurts. I touch my nose hurts. I touch my throat hurts. Touch my heart hurts. I touch my stomach hurts. I touch my knees hurt. I touch my feet hurt." And the doctor looked at Isidore and he said, "Isidore, you have a broken finger." So I would prepare a joke that was kind of PG that I could use at the beginning of meetings, and they used to sort of call me the clown. But it was my way of knowing that I was there. Mm-hmm. And I always had my hair blown dry before a corporate meeting. And
that you were part of the gang.
Yeah. And then someone would tell Stephen Sheffer, I don't know, I hope he's not alive anymore. He would always tell a dirty joke. It usually was a football joke of some kind. And then they would laugh. And then I got used to being interrupted, and then finally I got the courage to interrupt. Well, you were there, Joe, you know.
Yeah.
It's the famous Joe Berlinger. He made money in this business. Joe, what was I like? You tell me. Here, take a microphone.
Stand up.
All right. You were on.
I'm not dead, so it's not a memorial.
I know, this is very bizarre.
You can tell the truth.
No, I'm going to tell the story of Paradise Lost, and I think that's emblematic.
Don't look good or anything.
Oh, that's the whole point. That's the whole point.
No, but I don't like that kind of thing.
Too bad.
You, as succinctly as I can.
Yeah.
you sent us down, you sent me an article that these 3 teenagers in West Memphis, Arkansas had been killed.
Yeah.
Sorry, had killed 3 teenagers. And it was an open and shut case, and this was a kids killing kids film, and you wanted a devil worshipping, kids killing kids film.
Right.
I had just come off a Brother's Keeper with Bruce Sinofsky, and you were giving us, this was the call from Sheila Nevins. It was...
Wait till you get the call tonight, honey.
And I mean, people complain today that there's less opportunity in documentary for the last, 2 years with the shuttering of CNN and shuttering of Showtime. But in our era, if you weren't making a documentary for PBS or HBO, you weren't making a documentary. And so getting the call from Sheila was like, oh my God, we've arrived. So I was nervous, excited, but you wanted, and we all thought we wanted, a kids killing kids film, because that's what the story was. So we're working on the film for several months. We finally get access to the West Memphis 3, although they're not the West Memphis, they weren't called the West Memphis 3 then. They were these rotten teenagers who had sacrificed 3 little boys to the devil. And we did our first interviews, and 1 + 1 was not equaling 2. We started to get the feeling that they were innocent despite all the press saying otherwise. And I remember very nervously calling you up, saying, I don't think this is a kids killing kids film. They might be innocent. And I was half expecting you to say, well, get the fuck out of town. I want a kids killing kids film. But you said, oh, if they're innocent, that's better. Keep going. And so despite your the jokes you make, you are about justice, and you're also about the salacious sex stuff.
And I'm pretty.
You are pretty. but and the other thing, today, try to sell a verite film to a network, and it's impossible. What's the ending? Well, we don't know what the ending is. Well, then if you can't tell us what the ending is, so there's a lot less verite being made by networks. And you supported 3 films over 2 decades, and you didn't give us a deadline. You wanted the story. You wanted the truth. So.
And also, too, Joe, I'll never forget at the New York Film Festival where it played, and all 3 of those kids were there. And it was probably one of the most moving and beautiful things I've ever seen. And I think that without you and without Sheila's help, they never would have been free.
Without Sheila. But so the way I look at things, I mean, the evening stuff gave you the ability and the courage and the wherewithal to give people like us the opportunity to go out and get the truth. So, I mean, you've had such an impact. Now it sounds like a memorial. And you've had such an impact. I mean, that film, like that. When I started Paradise Lost, I had no idea that wrongful conviction even exists. I had no idea that false confessions exist, and that was my baptism.
I didn't either. I didn't know anything either.
And that was our baptism, and it kind of gave me a mission in life to continue on, both social justice documentaries and wrongful convictions in particular. And you gave us that you gave so many filmmakers their first break.
You have to realize one thing. HBO was a small 8-hour company. Then it was 12. Then it was 16. Then it was 18. Then it was 24. All they ever said to me was, here's more money, go. Here's more money, go. Very few people have that opportunity today. I don't have that opportunity. This film was made on a nickel and a dime.
Yeah.
And I think the thing was that, everybody says, oh, great, you did great. I was allowed to do great. If you're not allowed to do great, you can't do great. I could say to you, go ahead, because all I had to do was look at the budget and yank some more money out of it.
But you also have a great nose for what makes a great story.
Yeah, okay, so I'm good.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that are good at what they do and they don't have the money or the situation to go ahead and do what they have to do.
You figured
I'm not saying I'm not great, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to think that. Yeah. But I do think really and truly that I didn't appreciate it at the time. All I thought was, oh my God, I got to get 4 more hours. I got to get 16 hours. But if not for Barbara's film, and this is really truthful, I had gone to this is really true, Barbara, and I never told you this, okay? I went to the Yale Drama School, and I majored in directing. And when I graduated in 1963, which probably a lot of you weren't even born yet. Anyway, doesn't matter. We live longer now, so be careful. So the thing was, when I graduated, I wanted to work in the theater, but the only job I got offered was usher. I mean, here I'd gotten a master's at Yale, a BA at Barnard, and guys were still biting the back of my neck. I was the only, there were 2 directors in the Yale class. And then when I got out, I thought, I'm going to work in the theater. I'm going to be a director. I'm going to be someone's assistant. But that wasn't it. I couldn't get that. I couldn't. And so television was, I started teaching English and on camera for USIA, and I hated it. And then I met the director there, and then he was coming to New York and doing something called The Great American Dream Machine, and I got a job. Okay, I did not know what a documentary was.
Tell them what that program
Barbara,
is.
let me just tell you about Barbara. So there were 2 movies that someone said, I said, I don't know what a documentary is. What the fuck am I going to? There's a job at HBO, $35,000 a year. I want to get away from Don and all of that CBS shit and all that neck stuff. I mean, I really did actually have sores on my neck. And the thing is, they asked me if I knew someone who wanted to go to this place called HBO, and I thought it must be dirty movies, which I arranged for it to be
it was.
ultimately. Yeah. Yeah. But someone said you should watch 3. I think it was 2 docus then, Harlan County and Salesman.
Yeah, the Maisel brothers.
The Maisels and Harlan County, and I knew, honest to God, I knew the Milton Berle show because my girlfriend had a television, but I didn't know anything about this word documentary. You want to know about Aeschylus? I can tell you. Or Euripides? I can tell you. Docu? I didn't know what it meant. Well, when I saw Harlan County, I couldn't breathe. I actually stopped breathing. I mean, I couldn't believe that real people could be actors in their own lives, which is what they are. And then I remembered saying to a friend of mine, a television, if you look at it a certain way, it's like the theater, especially if you turn the lights out, which is why I always have to turn the light out when I'm watching television, because it's like the curtain goes up and real people tell their stories. And so I'm not really leaving theater. I'm really doing a different kind of theater. That Harlan County thing, I mean, and that woman in that film, not caring how she looked, going under in coal mines, salesmen, ordinary people, knocking on doors, trying to make a living. I mean, and it was gripping, and in the name of God, knocking on doors. I mean, it was incredible. It was incredible. And so then when I finally got this job on the Great American Dream Machine, going around asking people what their great American dreams were, because we couldn't afford animation. And I said to Al Perlmutter, who was my boss then, Al, could I hire the Maisels to go with me? I'll start 72nd Street all the way east, and I'll go 72nd Street to the west side, and I'll ask people what their dreams are. And so I did that, and I hired Al and his brother David, who slept between each of the...
He did that all his life, yes.
Well, I mean, I was
an intern there.
I got permission at the chess place. Come on, we're going to shoot. We're going to ask people. I got permission at the supermarket. Come on in. I got releases. So they would be in the back of the car, sleeping. And we did 72nd Street from York Avenue all the way to West End. And in that time, asking people what their dreams were, there were 1,000 docus. And I realized that this job that I had sort of taken by default was really an experimental, that I was in a wonderland that I knew nothing about. And, from that trip on 72nd Street and those maybe 300 poorly done, nervous kind of young woman interviews, there were stories. There were stories about a son who'd gotten lost in war and how a woman just couldn't buy anything sweet anymore. There were stories about a man who told me about his adulterous life and how his wife found out and left him, and now he was alone forever. So in that course of time, there were a million stories, X-rated, R-rated, G-rated, whatever, and I think that plus those 2 films said, I can do something with this, and I can get a job, and I can get benefits, and I can get my shrink paid for, and I can, whatever. And then they told me you get things like 401 things and all that. And I didn't even know what they were. But I figured that's what a job is, right? You get a job. So docus became a job and a revelation. And I thank you, Barbara, for that. And certainly the Maisels, and certainly the people on 72nd Street from York to West End Avenue.
Right. And you also had two people in your life, many people in your life that you adored, but Larry Kramer, for example.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to talk about him because he was quite extraordinary and you just absolutely loved him. And also
Go to the same psychiatrist that I go to?
No.
No? Do you go to anyone?
No. And also Gloria Steinem.
Oh, Gloria.
So
yeah.
talk about these two people
Okay.
who
influenced
just
my life. Okay, so Larry Kramer, they were doing Normal Heart on HBO, and someone said, "Oh, we have to do 20 minutes on Larry Kramer," and I thought, "Oh, he's supposed to be a really wretched person. He's supposed to be really difficult," and so then I thought, I don't want to do 20 minutes. And then I started reading about him. I read Faggots. I read all these books. And I saw The Normal Heart, which was the most extraordinary play
beautiful.
I'd ever seen in my whole life. And then I went to see him, and I was really, he was ill. And he wanted nothing to do with me. He had a mask on his face. He was in the hospital. I figured, I can't make this film. The next day I came back, no, a week later I came back to the hospital. And because his, not then husband, but his lover, friend, partner, called me and said, he's better now, and I think you can see him. I said, well, okay. So I went back to NYU, and I said to the nurse outside who I'd met before, how's he doing in there? He said, I went in, Larry was sitting up in bed, singing. And I knew what he was singing. And we both liked show tunes, and so I said, I'm the woman who's going to be working on this documentary about you, and I don't think it should be 20 minutes, Larry said. I'm not 20 minutes, he said. I'm, whatever. And so we bonded over this docu, and he became, in many ways, if there's such a thing as a mentor. He encouraged me to write a book. He encouraged me. He was just incredible to me, and never unkind, and needy. But, I would walk steps with him back and forth in the hall with his walker a lot of times. But in that journey in the hallway at 2 Washington Square, I got a lot of life lessons out of him. So it was really quite extraordinary.
You adored him.
I adored him. Yeah, I really did adore him. And I miss him. I miss him because I would like to tell him about today.
And he was also such a kind of guy that he didn't take any crap from anyone.
No.
And he stood up for what he believed in, as corny as that is. But boy, did he, in a time when it was very dangerous to do that.
I used to say to him, why can't you fight for something else? And he said, you don't tell me what fight to pick. You pick your fight, I'll pick my fight. And he used to eat, my favorite part was he liked lox and cream cheese. He said that was all that was left of him being Jewish, that he liked bagels, lox, and cream cheese, but he didn't like any lox. He liked only Nova.
Of course.
Only Nova.
Of course.
And so I would go to this rather expensive Upper East Side deli, and it closed. So one day I tried to sneak in a lox that was not Nova, and he took one bite out of it, and he said, are you trying to fool me? And I said, well, it still was expensive, Larry, but it wasn't called Nova. It was just called lox. He said, it's horrible, horrible. So he knew. And I will miss him forever. And he was terribly not wanting to die. Everybody thinks when people die, they want to die. He used to say to me all the time, I don't want to die. You know that. You met him that day. He didn't want to die. He was lying there dying, but he didn't want to die. This notion that people want to go is an interesting notion. Some do and some have to. But Larry wanted to live. He wanted to squeeze the last juice out of life. He wanted an opinion. He wanted to have an opinion about everything. He was great.
And Gloria?
Gloria. I was scared of Gloria.
You were scared of Gloria?
Yeah, I can be scared. 2 people I've been scared of, Gloria and Stephen Sondheim.
Wow.
But
Okay.
you scare me a little bit. But not like, okay. Gloria, well, because I didn't really know, I felt that I had done wrong things in becoming, quote, a new woman. I felt that I had, been flirtatious and suggestive and kissed people I shouldn't kiss and do things that I shouldn't do. And I confessed all this to Gloria. And she said to me once, you had no choice. And you will have a choice. That was the one thing she said. And she's still alive and kicking and, quite extraordinary. The other thing about Gloria was she said, men will never love us, really. And I said, why? What do you mean, what does that mean? She said, because women will always have something they never have, and they'll always legislate against it. And this was when Roe versus Wade was strong. Mm-hmm. And she said, they will never forgive us for being able to have their sons. And that was what she said. Having a child was the gift that they didn't have. And they would always be jealous of us and always be angry at us. And somehow it came true with the stuff with Roe versus Wade today. I thought, she's kind of right. Especially when you work on a film like this and you read some of this anti-Planned Parenthood stuff that they ban and don't put out, you realize it has to come from jealousy. It can't come from thinking kindly of another human being. It has to come from wanting what they have. So maybe she was more prophetic in that statement than I thought she was at the time. Stephen hated me. Stephen Sondheim hated me more than anybody else. I mean, he no matter what I did, I was assigned this docu, although I do love Stephen Sondheim, did love his work, not the man. If I would say, Stephen, I'm going out to get coffee, he would say, my name is Steve. If I said, Stephen, or Steve, I'm going out to get coffee, he'd say, my name is Stephen. If I said, oh, I heard you fell, and you can have this stool, you don't have to, he would say, if I wanted a stool, I'd get a stool. And
He made you tough.
Well, one day I grabbed him as we were walking out of some screening, and I said to someone, it was before cell phone, just beginning cell phone. I said, take our picture, quick. And this picture, which I don't seem to be able to find, we have to find it, is like him like this. And me like this. But I can't find it. He probably sent secret people out. But what a genius. What a genius. And no matter how I tried to be clever, I'd say things like, I'm sorry, grateful, forgetful, happy. I'd give quotes to him from his thing. He'd look at me in this sort of despondent, kind of way. And then I'll tell you one more story and then I'll be finished, okay?
No.
One night, when we were working on the show, and James Lapine was working on it, and it was like my dream, because it was document theater, in a very literal way.
And you love theater.
Yes. And suddenly Frank Rich said, oh my God, we're late for dinner. You know the story. We're late for dinner. And I said, where are we going? What are we doing? We were working on like graphics or something. And he said, we're going to Richard's house for dinner. I said, oh, who? He said, me and James and Larry. He said, are you not invited? And I said, no, I wasn't invited. So that was well into, it doesn't go away, that being left out.
Yes.
And it
And
doesn't go
he
away.
panned Harlan County.
It was sad. I hope the dinner was bad.
No, but he panned Harlan County. He said that it was a terrible film, that a half...
He did?
Yes.
Richard said that?
Yes. He did.
Are you here, Richard?
Here,
He was
wherever.
tough on me. He thought I was
And-
too old to work. He thought I was making too much money. He thought I should leave HBO. And I used to have this fantasy that I would be buried there, that they put my ashes in one of those. What'd you think of Richard? Or is he paying for you now? Tell me. Yeah. He's not here. Plepler. Whoa! So mean to me.
That's great.
I read a book about
And
HBO,
Michael
and it said
Fuchs,
when I was
too.
going down. No, Michael was good to me. He said at some point when she in the book, I read it in the book about HBO. It said, "Oh, Sheila's coming. How old is she now?" Did he say that? He said it to Mike.
But you have been loved. What about Sydney? 50 years?
52 years.
52 years. Let's talk about him for a moment.
I think you have to ask him about those 52 years. I can euphemize. I can do anything. Well, as he says, I'm never bored. I would think that would be his main sentence.
About you.
He's never bored. He never, ever, I was married before, too. He never, ever asked where I was. My first husband would say things to me like, I'm as good-looking a man as you are pretty a woman. And when I would come back from a trip or do something, there would be 3 cups. If I'd gone 3 days, 3 cups of coffee, 3 shirts that had to go to the cleaners, and 3 sets of underwear to go washed. And so that ended.
And wasn't there some wonderful love in your life who had a terrible mother that wanted you to get revenge?
Oh my God, you read that too? The love of my life.
Yes. But it changed your life.
She did change my life. This woman, I fell in love with this Yale. I had done a moot court when I was at the Yale Drama School, and I played Greenglass, or the wife of whatever it was. I can't remember who it was. But anyway, one of the traitors to the Rosenbergs, but a relative. And we did moot court, and they used to take people from the drama school, directors, and to play the parts at the law school. And there was this gorgeous, tall blonde. I don't think he's here. He's probably dead. I hope. Anyway, there's this gorgeous, tall, blonde guy there with big blue eyes, and I fell madly in love with him. And I went to his house after about 3 months of courtship and love, sometimes still. And I went to his house, and his mother said to me as we were drying dishes, so this was when dishwashers were fairly new. Shows you how old I really am. And we were drying dishes, and she said, aren't there any interesting Jewish men in the law school? Yeah. Anyway, it was inspirational because
You never saw him again, right? After
Yes.
that.
No, how do you know whether I saw him again or not?
Did you? Oh, okay.
That's between me and my psychiatrist.
Okay. But she gave you a sense of fighting back, right?
Oh, she certainly did. As a matter of fact, I see her face sometimes. I don't see my own mother's face. My mother's been dead for a long time. I see this woman's face when she said that to me because I thought, fuck you. We didn't say that then. I thought, fuck you. I'm going to show you. You bitch. I didn't say any of those words, but I actually did think that because she basically ruined a relationship that probably never would have worked anyway, but it was still love,
And another
Are
person.
you here, John? Are you somewhere?
What?
Are you old and ugly now? Are you here? Do you have a terminal disease, perhaps? Does anything hurt, honey?
What's the 10 minutes for?
Oh, there's
Oh.
a Q&A? I answered all the questions.
Well, they may have something for you.
Barbara, I thought maybe this was that I was going to ask you questions. I didn't really understand.
No, I was supposed to ask you questions, but,
I didn't rehearse anything.
well, too bad.
I just admire you a lot.
I admire you a lot.
No, I wouldn't, because you really got down in the dirt. I've never been in a coal mine,
Well,
and I
I'll
never
take
intend
you.
to be in one.
Well, I've
I'd
been
rather
out
go
of
to-
the
I'd
coal
rather go
mine
to
a long
Bergdorf.
time. Anyway,
Yeah.
John Alpert was somebody that you really did a lot of great work with.
Yeah, we did a lot of stuff, a lot of verite.
But
Yeah.
you brought in things. You allowed different
Yeah,
to see the Muslims and
That's very interesting because I began to think that nobody didn't have a story. Partly because of your work and partly because of the salesman, that somehow, I think this is true, Marissa. I talk to everybody, right? Everybody. All the time. But I'm always looking for a story. Yeah. And I don't care who the person is. Like taxi cab confessions. Oh, great idea.
Yes.
Yeah, because I used to tell taxi drivers things and go home at 2 o'clock. He says, what's the lady like you going home at 2 o'clock? So I figured, hey, the cameras are getting smaller. We'll do that. What I didn't know when we did taxi cab was that if I went out at 11 o'clock at night, I got R-rated. If I went out at 6 o'clock at night, it was boring. You know? And very often an executive, as you know, David, would appear in one of those cabs. Not you, no, not you. But, and I would have to erase it.
How would you know what would work? How did you get these ideas?
That's because in between, something happens that's very ordinary, but there's an extraordinary part of it. You know, it's extraordinary to survive life. Mm-hmm. Life is not, I don't know, it's like the way I play Wordle. You know how I play Wordle? I don't play it their way. I put in a word that represents the day. So let's say I was hurt because Doc NYC did not accept this film, and it really hurt my feelings. So I put in the word sadly, and then I thought, well, that's stupid, you know, whatever, because none of those letters worked. But then I thought, you know, like, I should think the opposite of sadly. Let me not play the game. I got 6 choices, so the first 2, I'll make it my game, and then I'll play their game. Because who wants to play a game everybody else is playing? But it's obvious, Wordle. It's obvious because everybody's doing it, so you got to do it differently. Everybody's doing book banning. Everybody's doing everything. You got to find different ways. So the first 2 I give myself for my own personal feelings. So I did sadly, and then I thought, that's ridiculous. You have to think of something the opposite of sadly. You can't just put sadly in because it's 5 letters and you feel sad that you got rejected. So I put in azure, azure, A-Z-U-R-E. I wasn't sure what it meant, but I figured that'll show them because they never use a Z or a U. You know, fuck this game, you know, fuck this game. So I put in azure, and guess what the word was? It was azure. And I won, and I thought to myself, that's why people think there's a God.
Right.
Because it's all about luck. It was luck, azure, it was just plain luck. And today I played again. What did I do today? I did something bad. I don't take the game seriously until, what? Don't spoil it. No, I don't take the game seriously until I fail on 3 with no letters. Then I start to really play
Somebody who else had a great deal to do with you is James Gandolfini.
I love James.
You went somewhere with him, and that sort of changed your life a little bit. Do you remember that?
Yes.
The hospital?
Yes.
Do you want to talk about it?
How do you know that story? I never told anybody that story.
Well, tell it to
Are you
us.
sleeping with some of the same people that
Who's sleeping? Stand up.
I don't do that anymore.
But you don't want to tell that story?
I do want to tell a story because it shows how you don't know people and how, you know. So here's this tough guy, James Gandolfini, Tony. And he had his heart in what was happening in the war in Vietnam. I mean, he really had his heart and soul in it. And I was terrified to ask him to host a show, but I began to realize at that point, to watch something so sad, I needed somebody so famous, because nobody would want to watch some of the stories that John was shooting out there in the green zone that were, just, because in that war, the casualties and the people that survived were much greater than in any other war in terms of injuries. So you would survive with no legs and survive with half a face because medicine had advanced, and emergency medicine had advanced. You could get things out in the field, out in the battlefield, you couldn't get before. Anyway, James came to a hospital, Walter Reed.
With his mother, right?
No, not with his mother. There was a mother sitting there reading the Bible to her son. We weren't allowed to go on the 4th floor, so of course I wanted to go to the 4th floor. The 4th floor was really the little boys who were not going to make it. It was very sad. But James wanted to go on the 4th floor. And he came into the room. And he's dead. He's such a great, really, he used to call me Mama. He was such a sweet, sweet man. And he wasn't a tough guy, which shows you can play any part you want in life and not be that person. So anyway, we're on the 4th floor. We're not supposed to be there. We got a small crew. And we go into this room, and he makes the crew go out because the guy is really completely bandaged, and his mother is reading from the Bible out loud to him. A very sweet, sad scene. And we weren't going to film it anyway, and it just was and James said, because everybody wanted him to sign, everybody was reading Bibles. One thing about Walter Reed is, you want to make money, sell Bibles. And so she was reading, some psalm to her son, and she was rocking back and forth. A nice little lady. And I said, James, this is the name on the door. Are you Mrs. Jones, or whatever the name was on the door? She said, yes, this is my boy. This is my boy. This is my boy. And she rocked back and forth. And it's very sad, really. And she said, the doctors say he has maybe 1 or 2 more days to live. And James said, she said to him, he loves your show. And could you sign this Bible? So she gives it to Gandolfini to sign, and he writes Tony Soprano, right? And she looks inside and she says, no, your name, your real name. And so he takes it back and he writes James Gandolfini. It's interesting. She was able to separate the 2 characters. And she gave the book back to her, and he started to cry. And he ran into the laundry room, and I said goodbye to her and hugged her and all that. And he was sobbing in the laundry room, just sobbing. And that was it. Tony Soprano left the hospital, fine. But in that moment, there was the real person and the real agony and the real moment that we didn't film and we could never really capture again. Yeah.
But it's something that changed you, and you'll always remember that.
Yeah,
right?
I always remember it. Twisted a little bit, but I remember it. But he was a lovely, lovely, lovely man. I mean, everybody dead is lovely, but he was particularly kind-hearted. No, I mean, you have to remember. No, I mean, do you know anybody dead that's not, other than Hitler? Anyone? I mean, did you ever go to a memorial service where they say he was a son of a bitch? Yeah. He was fucking his girlfriend for the last 20 years, and
The 3 girlfriends were standing
3 girlfriends,
there.
yeah. Yeah.
Which one? So now it's time, even though I have tons more to ask you, to do Q&A. Ask her anything.
Anything.
Anything. And she may or may not tell you. Anybody have a question?
Who are you? Who?
Oh, my name is Katie Carpenter.
And, hi, Katie. I know you.
Hi, Katie.
Tell them what you do, Katie.
Yeah.
I produce documentaries, mainly environmental documentaries, but I'm a huge fan of both of you. This is like big, big, big. Oh, hi. Okay, I just came up with the most obvious question because I really would like to know. I've seen so many of your films, but is there one that was so hard to do, and so worth it? There are probably many, but what would one be?
It's so hard to answer that. Can you answer a question?
Tourette's.
What?
Tourette's.
Yeah, Tourette's.
Well, Tourette's was because my son had Tourette's. And it took me 25 years to get the confidence to ask if I could do it. And then suddenly when it won a Primetime Emmy, everybody said, oh, it's so great that you did that for your kid. It was so nice you did. But the thing, it was very hard, and the Tourette's Foundation had to finance it themselves. About 70% of it was their money, and only 30% was from HBO. But but I don't really remember it because they owed it to me, believe me, and I didn't really think it. When you're working on something, it's the most important thing in the world to you. And when it goes on, it's the most important and the best thing you've ever done, or the worst thing you've ever done, but it's in your blood, And then a year later, something else takes its place. It's a very unfaithful profession in that way. I really can't think of, I guess the pelican that flew was very important to me. Nobody ever watched this docu. It was Pelican 875. I had seen him on CNN. He was covered, not him particularly, but he was covered with oil, and he couldn't lift his wings. And then Someone told me there was a volunteer group that took these pelicans. I don't even like pelicans, but they took these. I didn't even know, I thought a pelican is a bird. I don't, what do I know? So they took, I saw plastic pelicans, but I didn't know pelicans, so to speak. So they took this pelican and they put him in rehab. And I called Irene Taylor Brodsky, who's such a lovely filmmaker. And I said, Irene, could you go to New Orleans during the oil spill? Could you follow an oil pelican and see what happens? I'm just curious to know if they come back to life, because, I don't know, they're supposed to fly and they're covered with oil. So she said, like Trish did, the next day, out the window, out the door, leaving Seattle, on a plane. Anyway, she calls me up and she says, there's a lot of pelicans here, and they're, all covered with oil. I said, well, go out to the ocean and see if you can find one that's, so we get them straight off. Sure enough, she goes outside, down by the oil spill, and there are a number of pelicans. And she picks pelican, I think it was 895, I can't remember, because they labeled the pelicans. And she took it back to rehab, and she shot it over the next 6 weeks, his rehab. They taught him how to use his wings. They taught him what to eat fish. They trained him with, it was like unbelievable. It was like a volunteer group. And then came the day, this was before cell phones, so that we wanted to see if he could fly. And we were all on the phone at HBO, everybody. And the music guy, he didn't know whether it was a happy ending or a sad ending. So we didn't know if the pelican would fly or he would just toddle off into walking. We didn't really know. Or would he go back to rehab? But they would have to exterminate these pelicans if they couldn't fly because they had to let other pelicans in. So he was really going to fly for his life. And we were all sort of rooting for him. And Irene kept saying, he's walking around. He's like walking around. And the music guy is saying, what a down ending, And I'm saying, well, how long is he going to walk? What do you mean walking around? He's nibbling some green here. He's like walking around, and we're waiting. And I said, what's he doing, Irene? Is he going to, whatever? And then suddenly, out of nowhere, I guess he heard the music guy saying, I don't have an ending. And suddenly, he starts to flap his little wings, 895, and he soars up into the sky. And I'm not a religious woo-woo person. But I wept. He soars up into the sky, and there are other birds. I don't know if they were pelicans because they're too far. But he flies off with the rest of them. And we all of us, there were like 5 on the phone, 2 out in New Orleans, weeping. 1, because we have a great ending, and 2 because the pelican could fly. And we could no longer spot his number, was on his little wrist. But the point is, I remember that one only because it's like life.
Yeah.
The ending can go soar or it can
Flop.
stay on Earth.
Right.
Stay on Earth. And the musician, I can't even remember who did the music, but he was so happy. And it soared. He overdid it, but I let it be. He did it was like a great Hollywood,
Was that
no penguin could have
Lichtenstein?
taken it. Nobody watched the show.
I did.
You watched it, wasn't
Of course,
it great?
I loved it.
Wasn't it just
Yes.
great? Yeah, but it got no numbers. Everybody said, the pelican, they don't like those kind of,
How about Triangle Shirtwaist Fire? That's a pretty personal one for you.
But that's because I had a great aunt who died in that fire. It wasn't a good film, though.
Wow.
No, I didn't
I think the death certificate for that aunt was
Yes,
found.
that was good, yeah. But, yeah.
Schmata.
Yeah, Schmata. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking of the film Triangle. They did it, but that was really bad. Schmata was a good film. Yeah. It was about the decline of the for immigrants, especially Italian, Jewish, and German immigrants coming to this country in the garment center. It was the fall of the garment center. We were no longer going to be making our clothes here. We were going to get them from Indonesia and China and everywhere else. And so we did a show called Schmata, which in Yiddish means clothing. Scarf. Yeah, anything. What is a schmata? Anything. Clothing, scarf, anything.
And it's called the Schmata trade.
It was called the Schmata trade, right? And everybody said you have to change the title. I said, no, we're going to call it Schmata. But it was, who did that film?
Mark Levin.
Mark Levin, right. And Mark and I insisted on it being Shmata. And we had a screening of it at the firehouse that had not been able to save the women during that fire because the ladders, it was the beginning of the high rise and the beginning of Otis making elevators that would go above the 5th floor. That's why brownstones usually are 5 floors. Because, finally they had ladders that unfolded and went up. But there were none at this firehouse. So all the women, including this great aunt of mine, jumped out the window on Franklin Street.
The
and
doors
died.
were locked.
The doors were locked because they didn't want the girls going out to smoke. So it was a pretty sad, sad story. Yeah, Shmata was a good film, but it only touched on
certain aspects.
yeah, it had a little bit about my great aunt, just a little girl coming by and, kids came and read the names of the women who died in the fire. And before 9/11, it was the biggest industrial accident in America. But she was 16 years old.
Very sad. What about addiction?
My son was an addict. Yeah, I liked that. I learned a lot. I think it helped me be a better mother because I think I realized it was an illness, not a addiction. And that addiction within itself was an illness. And I learned from that film. I don't usually learn that much, but I really learned that it wasn't his fault. I really was.
I got to work on that one too.
Which one?
Steam fitters.
Which one?
Steam fitters. Addiction. Steam fitters. One of the ones.
I don't know what you're saying.
Steam Fitters Union, the people who put air conditioning pipes in and they were drunk all the time.
Oh. But that wasn't the name of the film.
No, it was part of that film. There were
yes,
shorts.
absolutely. Yes. I thought I did a film called Steam
Okay,
Fitters.
someone has a question. You said what?
I thought I did a film called Steam Fitters.
Oh, no, sorry.
I don't want to get senile during this interview.
A few senior moments are okay. Okay.
Is there a film you are 100% sure you would not get to make because you'd never get funding for it, but you're dying to make it anyway?
Just about every film we ever made. Every film, even though HBO had a lot of money. Every film. Although at some point when it was going 8, 16, they would say 4 more, 8 more. But then I thought a docu, before I really went to school with Barbara and people like that, before I understood verite or what that world was, I thought it was like Truman's last years. We did 1920, 1930, 1940, that kind of docu. I thought that was a docu. Hitler's, whatever. I didn't know what that was. I really didn't know. What was the question, though?
That you would really want to make, but you're 100% sure you would never be able to for whatever
Oh,
reason.
yes. But you'll kill me for this one. I'd like to defend, or at least hear from, the men who have been taken off our palette
Oh, the Me Too?
because of abuses, because I know the language they spoke when they did what they did. I'm not talking about Harvey. I'm not talking about felons. I'm talking about, men that we've
Locker room
lost.
boys.
Yeah, that I really think deserved another chance. I mean, you can kill someone and get out of jail, but you can't tweak someone's tits and, get away with it. I having been tweaked, I would argue that those men got away with it because they're now dead. But, I was young and it didn't damage me for life. And I would have hated to lose the talents of some of these people. But I wouldn't have the guts to do it because too many women would hate me. And if I mention in front of any young women, give the guy a break, and I probably would call it that, and I think it would sell a lot of copies. But I don't think I'd have any friends. And then my memorial service would be tainted with negative, none of my young...
Lots of men.
Well, my darling, isn't that what it's all about? I'm sorry for some of the guys. I really am. Because I was there. I was there when those things were happening. I was next door to Harvey in the Peninsula Hotel. I know who was outside the room. Not everybody, but I was there. I did a film with Heidi Fleiss. I knew who was outside. Heidi and I knew. We were in the room together laughing. So I don't tell that story because I'm a chicken.
You said you would tell anything.
Not that one.
Okay.
No, because I think progress is more important than truth when it comes, or at least the prevailing winds of that time.
Okay.
And I think the progress is more important. I think women have made the progress essential. And so I'd rather not talk about the exceptions to their rules. But there are exceptions to their rules. I'm sorry. You know, if you only speak Portuguese, then, you know, leave these guys alone. But I shouldn't say that. I'm so sorry. I take it back.
Are there any other questions?
What now? Oh, that's a great question. I don't know the answer. Somehow I felt this film was, I don't know, I could get a job tomorrow. Who's going to hire an 84-year-old woman? Come on. Oh. But do any of you have any money?
We do the best we could.
Money was very important to me because I wanted to be like rich Uncle Harry. I wanted to be rich Aunt Sheila.
You did it.
Yeah, I did it. Because at HBO, I was there for 37 years, and every year, without asking, you got 2% more. So if I was there for 37 years and I got 2% a year, those of you who can add or have a watch, just figure it out. I was doing very well when I was kicked out. Plus the bonus, I never thought I'd make that kind of money. Never. I never
You
asked.
said kicked out. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, I was kicked out.
Well, what
I mean, not
happened? They
physically.
said that you retired.
I know, but that was a lie.
I know it was.
But I didn't know. I thought, they said you have to give other people a chance. You're in your 70s. You have to, you know, do this. You have to do that. And I bought into it. I don't understand who it was. I don't know why I did that. I really don't know why I didn't say I'm not leaving. This is my home. I built it. This is my house. These are my logs. It's my fireplace. Fuck you. But I didn't do that. And I don't know why I didn't do it, because I spent 6 months in bed after that. Nobody called. The only one who came by was Joe Berlinger.
Yay.
Is that true or not true? You brought me flowers.
Oh.
And I used to get so many flowers. You know, when you're a buyer, you get flowers, like you stub your toe. Everything. Oh, let me get you Anderson. You know, you have a headache. They say, oh, my God, let me see. You know, when you're out, nobody calls you. Nobody. I mean, I used to sell real sex to Netflix on the rooftop of the peninsula. And when, I mean, this was in time when they were sending out DVDs, I mean, a long time ago. But I wrote letters to these people and said, I'm in 76 or whatever I was at the time, and I'm looking for work, and I'm leaving HBO. And I never got an answer.
Wow.
Never. I went once to the rooftop of the peninsula because I was following a film to the end. And there were people there that I knew, and they didn't even talk to me. They didn't even come over.
Wow.
So buyers, which is what I was, is an unrealistic position. You're loved until you don't have your cash account anymore. Sad. So when MTV came along, I jumped. It was the only one that came along. Nobody else. I took it.
You took it, and you're doing really extremely well with
If you had
it.
been my Jewish mother, I would be much more confident in myself.
I would be glad to be.
Because I would really be like a star. It never
You are a
occurred to me-
star
I never
without a
occurred to me-
Jewish mother.
Oh, okay, thanks. It never occurred to me when I was at HBO that I should be running HBO. Never occurred to me, and I've told this to my darling Marissa. I have told her this. It never occurred to me until I left, when people would say things to me like, you were amazing, you should run the place. Why did this guy? It never occurred to me. That's why I say the language of the times. It never occurred to me that a woman could be the head of HBO, even though I knew every cranny, you know, everybody's girlfriend, everybody's boyfriend, every piece of equipment, you know, every fire exit. It never occurred to me. It didn't occur to me until people said to me afterwards. I remember Maureen Dowd did this interview, and I said, it's time for me to go.
Yeah.
And she said to me about 6 months later, did you lie to me? And I said, no, Maureen, I did not lie. I didn't know. They told me I'd get 2 bonuses, and after all, I could give other women a chance. And I could, you know, I like the... And then I thought, well, I have so many friends in the business. Lie. And they'll come and give me work. And maybe it is time for a change. I was kind of like, you know, I don't know. I don't know what it was. 2 bonuses. Everybody else who was being let go was getting 1 bonus. I would get 2, and I had had a non-compete for 2 years. I would get a salary for nothing. Yeah, I'm a poor little girl from the East Side. You tell me 2 years salary and bonus. I say, woohoo! But I don't think hard enough. You know, I don't think the person telling me that I should have their job. I don't think that. That's why I say, even though I know about some of these men who got caught or trapped, I think the advances that women made are greater than the few men I could free. But I would like to write a bestseller.
Or it's never too late. We'll be a
No.
force behind you.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's so unpleasant. I don't want my...
Okay.
Oh, look who's there. Hi, gorgeous.
This isn't your memorial, but I have to say something.
What?
When the first question was, what is it about you? And I didn't have the pleasure of making a film. We tried to make a film when you were at HBO. But I immediately thought empathy and humor. You always made me laugh. Okay, so I got the call. I got the Sheila call that many of us in this room got. I was in the bathtub, and I panicked. It was a couple years ago, and my wife was in the bathtub too, and I said, "Oh my God, it's Sheila."
How did you not get electrocuted?
I have a case on the phone, but I said, "Should I take it?" And it was you. You were saying. I answered. She said, "Take the call." I took the call, and you said, I love your father. I need to have your film." And you went on. And I said, "Well, let's talk about it next week when I'm in New York." You said, "I'm never talking to you again if you don't give me the film." That's what you said. And it was so funny and so
That is
strong and so passionate. And you said you would see my father's face in a crowd of 1,000 faces. You would never forget his face.
I still don't.
And that you loved him and you would do right. And
Eli.
I chose to go.
Tell them about
with
your
you.
film. Tell them your film.
The film's called Last Flight Home. It won here last year. Barbara was on the jury. So was Joe. There you go. The jury's in the room.
Oh, you're
not about
regular.
me.
I thought you came from me.
And we launched right then. But it was working with you was, and I know that I share this, but I feel like no one has said this yet. It allowed me to survive that experience. Everything that we went through, and such a personal story I was sharing, the love that you share with filmmakers, the courage that you give us, the
It is a
humor.
memorial service. I knew it was.
I just want you to hear it. You know, the part of the joy of Last Flight Home is it is kind of a living memorial to my dad, and he gets to hear this
But
stuff.
he was
and
a
I
great
want you to hear
man.
this.
It's not my fault.
No,
I fell in
but
love
you're a
with your
great
father.
woman,
You
and
should be worried about that.
I just want to say that there's this really incredible edge that Sheila always had. I call her the Elon Musk of documentary. But not.
I don't have
has
his
a bad
money, honey.
connotation now.
2% a year is not Elon Musk.
Do you have his
But
Do you have his car?
No.
she made Doc sexy, right? But what a lot of people don't know is that there's a very, very soft, beautiful soul there. And I did come see you also when you were in between jobs. And you gave me your book. And you should tell everybody about your book because John is in the book.
Yes, you should.
Among all the other men. And
So 6 years old, that book.
so what?
So it's still
it bad?
around,
Is
So
it
I wrote a
restricted?
book. I wrote a book.
and it's
And
a
it was a
great book.
bestseller for 1 week on the New York Times bestseller list. And it was called You Don't Look Your Age and Other Fairy Tales. And it had a lot of stories. And I am writing a
good.
book. And it's called Where Have I Been All My Life? You don't like the title?
We do. I like it.
You do?
I do very much.
I mean, it's not just about missed opportunities, but it's like when you look back, I mean, it's like the HBO thing. It never occurred to me. It never occurred to me that it wasn't right for Don to chew the back of my neck or some known correspondent who may still be alive. It never occurred to me that I wasn't supposed to allow that to happen. And my girlfriend, Roberta, who was a Phi Beta Kappa at Barnard and at the Johns Hopkins School of International Affairs, when I called her up and I said, you know, Don, you had bit the back of my neck and I only got 16 weeks. She said, you'll keep the job. You'll keep the job. I mean, that was the language. That was the language. I didn't know to say, don't do that. I just didn't know. I didn't know.
But I think as you reflect back and you do this book, that you're going to have so many extraordinary memories come alive, and films that you've done, and people
One will
that you've
be,
worked
and you'll
with.
think I'm saying it, sitting here with you.
Oh,
Because I really think that I have been the kind of to your purity, I'm the trash heap.
I can
I
be
mean,
very.
I think women without clothes on.
I can be very trashy.
Women getting, you can?
Of course, give me a chance.
But if I'd given you, but if I'd asked you to do a real sex, you wouldn't have done it.
I might have with Tom Hurwitz.
You would have? Tom was happy to do it.
Yes, he loved it.
Whoa.
Yes.
I knew every hooker in Las Vegas. Most of them were lesbians, and one of them I said, "Do you feel abused?" And she said to me, "Honey, when I worked at McDonald's, I was abused." She said, "Here, you just use the same line. You say, I never saw anything so big before."
Hand me the lubricant.
Oh, those women, they were really terrific.
Yeah.
Anyway, are we finished?
Are we done?
Done?
Okay, this was fun.
Thank you.